Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The celestial compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. I'm Kathy Beal. How's everyone doing after the crazy energies and astrology of March? We're done with eclipses until the fall, technically, although we're definitely going to be experiencing their playing out for weeks and probably months. We're in the very first days of Neptune in Aries, spiritual warrior energy, among many other things. And do you feel, in a sense, as if you have awakened from some kind of weird dream, or that you're in the process of coming to? That would be the Neptune and Aries part. That'll get even stronger next week when Mercury moves into Aries. This week, however, things are still slow and a bit strange because the two planets that are retrograde, Mercury and then Venus, are both stationing direct toward the end of the zodiac. That always slows things down and gives a sensation of being suspended in time a bit. But there's a benefit to this, all right? So this is not the week to push things. This is the week to float and look and see what's actually been in the water with you, what's actually floating by you. The suspended in time sensation can make it possible for you to actually glimpse things that weren't there before. Think of the card of the Four of Cups in the tarot, only the figure at the tree is actually looking at the cup in his periphery. We also have a full moon this week, a Venus-ruled full moon. So we're going to be thinking a whole lot about what we value about creativity, and most especially about the nature and quality of our connections and agreements. And a lot of stuff is up for renegotiation on every level. You can learn a lot more about all of this in my forecasts for the full moon and for the month of April, and also the every week at my site, empowermentunlimited.net, on my YouTube channel, Professional Aquarian, and the full and new moon and monthly forecasts are also at omtimes.com. And with that, I am thrilled to bring a fascinating guest for you. I've been really lucky this year to get people with really incredible backgrounds to agree and to come and talk with me. And today we have Dr. Jennifer Lisa Vest, also known as the Ethical Psychic. She's an Afro-Indigenous healer, teacher, storyteller, and author in the realms of healing, ethical psychic practice, and philosophy, with over 12 years practice as a medical intuitive. She's also gained a lot of exposure on the internet since November, when her spirit guides told her to start help people navigate despair and a very unusual phenomenon that bonded a lot of us, which is how I found Jennifer Lisa. And we will talk about that. And I suspect a bunch of people that I'm already seeing in the chat are familiar with this as well. She is the author of The Ethical Psychic, A Beginner's Guide to Healing with Integrity, which is a groundbreaking guidebook for ethical practice and intuitive work across modalities, and Sovereign Wisdom, Generating Native American Philosophy from sorry, I got distracted. From Indigenous Cultures. She hosts the podcast, The Journal of a Medical Intuitive, available on iHeart Radio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many other platforms. She holds a PhD in Indigenous philosophy and ethnic studies from UC Berkeley, a master's in Caribbean history from Howard, and a BA in physics from Hampshire College. Her first career was as a philosophy professor. I so vibe with this, I gotta say, because you also come from the background of a lot of academic training and logic, and yet intuition, which I also have. I don't know if I'm a lawyer who's also an astrologer, and I say I live on the bridge between the rational mind and intuition. So lots more I could say. We could spend 10 more minutes just reading your bio. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Kathy.
I see the chat is blowing up with your fans. This is wonderful. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about your story and how you got to the many things, like where you started academically and how you got to where you are now. So the journey from physics to philosophy to psychic.
Yeah, I've been on a windy road. I signed up for a whole lot of stuff this lifetime. And so when I started out, just as a baby, I had spirit teachers who were coming to get me and taking me out of bed at night and taking me out of body and traveling around the world, going into the future and the past. And I had a lot of gifts on board as a child. I had a great grandmother on my father's side of the family who was gifted, and she kind of started mentoring me at a young age. And then my mother was psychic, and my mother's on that side. And so I also got some guidance from my mother, but I was really trying to live a normal life. And so I was really interested in being an intellectual. I just loved, science and philosophy and, history. And I just love books. And so I didn't really want to be on that path, right? I wanted to be this normal person. And so I was trying very hard. I was continuing to have all of these experiences, but I had kind of a love-hate relationship with my gifts where I would kind of turn them on, turn them off. And I tried to keep them secret because it did cause, problems for other people. Other people were frightened. And, when you tell the future, that's usually not popular. And especially when you're a kid, especially because the kind of things we predict tend to be not the best things, right? And then like knowing what people are feeling or thinking, people also don't really appreciate that. So, as a young person, I was, kind of resisting it, but I just kept getting teachers showing up in my life that I was not asking for. And so I kept getting training. Like I had teachers in, Jamaica and Trinidad. And then I had a teacher in the US who taught me, Native American Sweatlodge. I became a firekeeper, and I just kind of kept getting trained. But at the same time, I was like, this is just something I do on the side to kind of, quietly. And my real life is the life of the intellectual. And at a certain point that all finally changed when I got very sick. I started to go to medical intuitives. And I went to this, my dad took me to this medical intuitive. My dad is also quite intuitive. And he took me to a medical intuitive. And she gave me this really serious reading where she really kind of chastised me and said, look, you have to deal with these gifts. If you don't deal with these gifts, you're going to stay sick. And that was probably the only thing that was going to motivate me to take them seriously enough, And so for the first time in my life, I sought out a teacher. And then I spent 5 years studying with the Spiritualists in Casadega in Florida. And then I got real serious about my gifts. I, in the process of taking a lot of classes on psychic development, mediumship, and healing, my teachers made it clear to me that I was a medical intuitive and that I needed to develop that gift because it's a rarer gift. And so that's when I started to get serious about developing as a medical intuitive. And then I ended up coming to California and, setting up practice and helping people. And then I went on to start teaching everything that I knew how to do, psychic development, mediumship, Reiki, energy healing, and medical intuition. But I do feel that medical intuition was kind of a natural fit for someone like me or like you, who both loves the rational and the empirical and also the intuitive. I have always been equally situated in both of those worlds. And with medical intuition, we get to bring it together. Medical intuition combines those different types of knowledge. I think that the future is about recognizing that these different ways of knowing are all equally valid.
And they can flow in and out of each other and inform each other. And so I am curious a bit about how physics fits into this.
I just loved science as a kid. And I did, I got my first degree in physics, and I did work as an engineer for a couple of years. And I worked at Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, where we're, banging particles together. My big love was cosmology. I was interested in the nature of the origins of the universe and where we come from. And so my interest in physics and philosophy, they were really similar. My interest in physics, philosophy, and spirituality were all kind of the same question. Like, what are these fundamental questions? Who are we? Why are we here? And so that's what really got me into physics was, being interested in the stars and how things, what the fundamental answers are to things. But, also I'm a starseed. And so as a child, I had lots of experiences with star beings and traveling to other planets and being trained by them. And so that's also why, of course, I had this fascination with stars and, and astrophysics, because it's a part of who I am.
I suspected that was the direction that you were going to go with this. I don't know if you're familiar with the children's author, Madeleine L'Engle. She wrote the book A Wrinkle in Time and many, many others. And she, I heard her say, I followed her a lot, saw her in person several times. And I heard her say that she believed that quantum physicists were the theologians of modern times. And so that fits kind of what you're saying, trying to find the connectedness to something that's greater than the human experience.
Yeah, quantum mechanics helps us to begin to see kind of a scientific validity for what mystics have been saying for centuries. So when I was in college studying physics, I had a little group of buddies, and we used to all sit around and talk about how physics could be used to study psychic phenomena and all of these interesting otherworld topics. And at the time, my professor was really opposed to that, and he thought it was absurd. But there were these interesting books coming out, like The Dancing Woolley Masters and The Holographic Universe by Talbot. And so we were reading those books, and, string theory, I was really into string theory when I was in college. And now it's very much more of an accepted theory of the universe. But back then it was quite controversial. And yet my experience traveling out of body confirms a lot of that for me. Like this folded space. Like when I travel from realm to realm, you don't go through space. Space comes to you. And so there's a lot that we experience as mystics, which really matches what people in quantum mechanics are finding.
Makes complete sense. So let's jump to something that is really extreme for some people and an amazing phenomenon for a lot of us, and that is dreaming women. I am one of them. In early November of 2024, really surprising, a number of women started having very, very vivid, specific dreams. I do not dream about people in the news. I met Kamala Harris the night before the election. I know people who saw her in the Oval Office. And gradually people started finding themselves online. How did you get in the middle of this? Because I came in when you were already in your storytelling phase.
Yeah. So on November 6th, I did not sleep on November 5th. My sister was over. We were originally intending to watch the results and go to a celebration party. We've been invited to several of them because we were actively involved in campaigning for Harris. And so that was our original plan. And my sister was tired, so she wanted to go to bed early. And so we both were supposed to be going to bed early, but I could not sleep. And so I got the news, I think at like 1 a.m. And my first reaction was just such complete shock that I started like researching digital nomad visas. Where am I going to move to? And I was between Portugal and Canada. And, and so I spent a couple of hours on that. And then I stayed up all night, and then I thought, I got to talk to my sisters about this. And I was just in kind of a state of shock. But then I finally went to sleep for a few hours at probably like 8 a.m. And when I woke up on the 6th, I had a very clear sense that this was not the actual outcome, that this was false, and that it was not going to stand. And I felt kind of crazy having this feeling. And so I decided to go online and to see anyone else. And when I first went online, which I think was the 6th, nobody was really saying this. But I think it was the 7th that I found Gia Prism talking about this, and maybe Spirituality with Sam, I'm not sure. And I got emboldened when I saw that there was at least one other person, I think it was Gia, one other person who was getting the same exact information I was getting. And I felt, okay, I need to start posting. And I was not a big TikTok poster before that. I mean, I had a TikTok account. It was really just to promote my book. And so I just had a few videos on there. It wasn't really a big part of my life, but I just got very strong push from my guides. And I just started getting messages every day from my guides that they wanted me to share with the collective. And so I started posting every day on TikTok about the dreams I was having or the vision. So I get information while I'm awake mostly, but I also get information while I'm sleeping. But I call them all dreams, whether it's an awake dream or a sleep dream, it's still a dream. And so I was getting all of this information. Gia Prism coined this phenomenon of all of these women waking up at 3 and 4 in the morning as the 4 a.m. club. Now, I didn't wake up at 4 a.m. Like I said, I stayed up all night, but
I did. I woke up at 3.
Yeah. And what I noticed, so I was called upon to kind of be there to help people elevate their energy, stay hopeful, and to take seriously the dreams they were having and to listen to their intuition. And over time, I was getting more and more guidance from my guides as to what I was supposed to do. And I was guided to start to organize the Dreaming Women. And so they gave me that term, Dreaming Women. And it's meant to encompass not just the 4 a.m. club, but also all of the intuitives and healers who have been getting information. And many of us have been getting information our whole life. But, there's like the 4 a.m. club. A lot of them were people who weren't necessarily intuitive until that day, and now they are. And then there were other people who were already intuitives who may not have woken up at 4 a.m., but they are getting information. And so I guess that's why my guides said to start talking about Dreaming Women as this term to kind of cover everything and everyone. And so I was called to start gathering the dreaming women. And so I started doing a lot of lives. I was also called to run meditations daily for a few weeks to help people to collectively visualize the future. And when I first started out, I was just speaking plainly about my dreams. Oh, I had, my guide said this. But I got censored really early on. Like within a couple of weeks, I was disqualified. I was given all these violations on just random things. And TikTok decided, I guess they didn't want my voice out there. And so my account's been suppressed for about 3 months. But somehow I'm still reaching people. And and so I started to tell stories. And I am a storyteller. I'm a poet. My grandmother was a storyteller. So it wasn't a new thing for me to tell stories, but it was a new thing on this platform, And so I started to translate all of my dreams into stories where everything was in code, right? I didn't use any real names anymore. And I made up names for everybody. And a lot of them were funny, like, because humor is an important part of how we handle stressful times. And so I purposely created, funny names for some of the characters. And I began telling these stories every day.
And they're in bite sizes. That's part of what's good. But let me back up. Do you think these things through, or do you just flow? You have, okay, here's what my dream, this is what my vision is. So now I'm translating it. Or do you just?
Okay, I'll tell you my process. So like once every day, every other day, or every couple of days, I'll sit down, go into a meditation. And then what I'll do is I'll travel out of body and I'll go up and to different realms. And sometimes I go to talk to my council, different teachers of mine. Sometimes I talk to star beings. It's different. Sometimes I talk to Mother Earth. I just go different places. And then while I'm doing that, I am able to kind of go up and down during that process. And so I can record myself during the process and I record what I'm getting. When I'm done, and I come back out of the trance, I then transcribe the recording. I don't always remember it all, of course. I transcribe it and then I read it. I take a couple notes, like what do I think are the main messages I should deliver. I put a couple notes on an index card and then I sit down in front of the camera and I just tell the story in the moment. I don't write the story. I don't plan the story. I just remember that there's these 3 messages or however many messages I'm trying to cover that day. And so I got to make sure I hit these points. And then I just go with it. And so it's kind of, inspired the way the story unfolds. Now, luckily there's a pause button on TikTok so you can keep stopping. And so I use that a lot to help me with creating a rhythm for the story. And to allow me to kind of stop and make sure that I'm, receiving it the way it's supposed to be said.
You have many different metaphors, similes for what we've been through. And that's actually gotten pretty inspired all across TikTok and YouTube. And there's the pie contest, there's the joust, all kinds of different things. It's not too hard to figure out what someone is talking about. And I'm looking in the comments, I'm seeing several people mention a phenomenon that's worth weaving into this. I remember when I woke up at 4 a.m, I thought, or was it 3 a.m, I thought, I don't want to see the news. I'm not gonna like it, but I didn't have a sick feeling in my stomach. 4 years earlier, I felt like we had been sucked into an alternate timeline by Russian military intelligence. I honestly thought that this does not feel right at all. And I had a sense of a train coming at us and people with the power to turn the train around, not doing anything. I have not had a sense of doom, even with all of the effery that has been going on. And many people, and I'm seeing this, many people saying they woke up, they didn't like it, they knew something was wrong, but I don't know people who've been lying on the couch in a fetal position, shivering and quivering. That's been something you've noticed too, right? There's this feeling of this isn't real when we're really okay.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the really strange things about it. I think for the Dreaming Women and the 4 a.m. Club is that we felt hopeful despite the evidence. And I felt a little crazy because for those first few months, like before January 20th, I was so hopeful and happy, and I was not worried. I was not sad. I felt like maybe I should be. I certainly knew a lot of people who were, especially and online, a lot of people were struggling. But I felt, kind of like we were the Dreaming Women, the 4 a.m. Club, we were allowed to live in this different space for the last few months where we were allowed to see things from a different perspective. And that prevented us from kind of dropping into the depths of despair. I do admit, though, that after the 20th, I was shook because so many of us saw that going differently. And although I have to admit now that the day before, on the 19th, I had a very bad feeling, and all day I was very, very worried. But I just kind of tried to disregard it because I was like, well, that can't be, right? We've gotten so much information that logically leads to things going a certain way.
You did say one thing that came true, though. You kept saying no hand on book, and there was no hand on book. You were given that piece of information accurately.
Yeah, it's funny how psychic works and how precog works is that we're shown things and we try to interpret it, and we're not always right when we interpret it. And so like I kept seeing, Lotus Queen with her hand up, taking an oath. And lots of people saw that. Lots of people saw her on the podium with her hand up. And so there was this image that was an imprint from the future that a lot of us were able to tap into. The day before, on the 19th, that image faded for me. And that's why I was so sad. But I disregarded what I was feeling because I thought there's too many of us who have already seen this. But this will happen sometimes with seeing the future, that we get close to it. As we get close to it, it'll either get very, very clear, or if we're no longer on that timeline, it will start to fade and a different image will appear. And so I think that's why so many of us, I think maybe I did have talked to a couple of other dreaming people about what happened. And a couple of them have said, yeah, they did have a bad feeling that morning or the day before, but they didn't believe it because we had seen that image of her for months,
Yep, with you. Well, we're going to take a break briefly. People, do not go away. It's only going to get more interesting, I'm sure. So see you in a couple of minutes.
Om Times TV.
Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again? empowermentunlimited.net.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with Dr. Jennifer Lisa Vest, the ethical psychic. And right before the break, we were talking about the phenomenon of dreaming women who had similar dreams and maybe even discovered their intuitive abilities, long about the beginning of November of last year. And this community has continued to flourish. And I want to focus on the word community because this is something you have brought up a lot and increasingly in your lives and your videos since January. So you got information about the importance of community.
Yeah, I've been given that message so many times by my guides, the importance of us getting into community. And they've given me a lot of different things about that I've shared. One of them is that we should each have a group of 4 people that is near us, like in your neighborhood or, close enough that you can walk to their house or they can come over or maybe drive to your house. That we should each have a small group. But that also in general, we should be working in our community in some way, connecting with other people in some way. And of course, we have community online as well, but it's really important for us to have in-person community at this time as well. And there's a number of reasons for that. Some are obvious, like, you're not going to be as sad if you're in community. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by things, and you just phone a friend or you get together with a few friends for coffee or knitting or book club or whatever you're forming, you're going to feel better. But also it's because it's now the time for us to kind of combine our lights, combine our energy, because we're more powerful in groups. A lot of us are waking up right now. This is what the Dreaming Women phenomenon or the 4 a.m. Club phenomenon is about. It's about a lot of people stepping fully into their power, especially women right now, because it's the rise of the divine feminine happening on a cosmic scale. But it's also people who are not women, men and theys and gays who are just stepping more into their feminine aspect. And so because of that, because so many people are waking up and stepping fully into their path, becoming more intuitive, having more dreams, getting more intuitive hunches right now, it's always good to come together when that's happening, because we strengthen each other by talking about it, sharing it, working together. We then really strengthen our gifts.
There are a couple of core groups that have been floating around in my life that have really solidified just in the past few months, and it fits with what you're saying.
Yeah
Very much so. And I noticed that you really frequently, when you're doing a live, you frequently bring other people on camera with you, so it's not just you, it's building a network of people.
Yeah, I've brought a lot of people onto my lives. I've actively tried to get those people to get a higher follower count so that they can influence more people. And I've also organized Dreaming Women offline. Because that's also, and I'm also involved in my community locally, in a feminist organization and in some other things that I do. And because it's really all about community right now.
Agreed completely. And interestingly, I think that there is an aspect of community or communal life that ties into another aspect of your work, and that has to do with intergenerational healing or ancestral work. From just a piece of background here, I don't live near most of the people I'm related to and grew up very far away from my family's roots. And last year, with my favorite cousins, we went back to the town of our birth and we toured it. And we were in the grave area for one side of our family that had not been touched for 80 years. And I've been doing genealogy and taking us back to a town in Czechoslovakia that apparently we lived in for centuries. And someone I know went there and sent me photos of it, of this town, which was mind blowing. And I haven't quite figured out yet what this means, but I know it's a piece of something. There's a constant text thread now with my cousins who were on this trip with me. Mostly about sports, politics, but still there's a connection that's been rekindled. So what do you, with what you do with the intergenerational piece of the medical healing, of the medical intuition, does anything that I'm saying kind of even touch on what you do, what you approach?
Yeah, so I've been teaching medical intuition for many years, and I currently teach most of my classes on the Shift Network. I also have some classes on my website that people can buy that are pre-recorded, but my focus has been mostly medical intuition. And recently I've expanded my teaching in medical intuition to include looking at ancestral medicine, ancestral healing, intergenerational healing. And yeah, the kind of things that you're doing are a part of that. So going and visiting the land where your people are from, whether it's a cemetery or an old homestead or a country that your people immigrated from, that can be an important part of healing, the generations, returning to those spaces, because, we have connections to land, and our ancestors had connections to land. And so sometimes going, and that's why a lot of people like to go to cemeteries, because they can feel the energy of being in that space. They can feel more connected to their deceased relatives in that space. But the same is true if you go to a piece of land where they used to live. You'll feel them there. And so that can be very healing, to have gatherings, talking circles with family members on the land where your ancestors were or where they died. That can be very healing. In my courses, what I help people do is look at ancestral medicine in a couple of ways. I look at ancestral traditions of healing, and medical intuition is one of those. A lot of indigenous cultures have some form of medical intuition. And we all have some type of heritage that we can draw on. Even if you're disconnected from some of your heritage, you can reconnect to it. And so like what you did, going and doing the family genealogy, that's really helpful, because it can help you to find out, okay, where are my ancestors from? Maybe the stories didn't get passed down by your family. And then you have to go research it. And I did that, when I was quite young. I think because I had a strong connection to my great grandmother, who she was 102 when she died. And she had documented a lot of the family history. And then she told it to me when I was young, and I think she put a bug in my ear. And so from a very early age, I went around always talking to the old people in my family. And I even traveled around, to visit them. And I went to cemeteries, and I had the old people take me to different places. I went to the archives, and that really helped me. It helps you to connect with your ancestors, because, I'm a medium, but just because I'm a medium doesn't mean I'm automatically going to be bringing through my dead relatives, right? I have to have an interest in that, and I have to do something to signal to them that they're welcome. And so some of the things I teach are like, how do you set up an ancestor altar? How do you honor your ancestors in such a way that you can kind of invite them into your life? How do you get information about your family? By talking to your ancestors, or having a dream, trying to set up circumstances that encourage you to have dreams about your family. And then how do we heal some of the family wounds? A lot of times we have patterns in our family that get passed down, and we're not even aware of it. Like, like maybe you're struggling with a lot of broken romantic relationships, and then you look at your family history and you discover that your grandmother and your great aunt and your great they all had the same type of problems with their relationships that you have, and you realize that some of that was passed down to you. And sometimes reflecting on that, talking about it, and then also doing rituals related to it can help you to release some of those patterns. And that can be an important part of medical intuition. When you're helping somebody as a medical intuitive, you're helping them get to the root cause.
Mhm.
Why are they sick? Why are they having this ailment? And there's physical root causes, there are emotional, there are spiritual root causes. And among the spiritual root causes, there can be ancestral causes. So sometimes our ancestors are attached to us and we're taking on some of their symptoms. Sometimes we're caught up in a, family karma or family energetic imprint. And so this is just kind of one more way to get information for somebody about what's causing their ailment.
Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense. And this fits in so wonderfully with the discoveries that I've been going through in the past 9 months, maybe. So I have new avenues to take it. And when you say you teach this on the Shift Network, is it a regularly starting class? Is it an ongoing one? If people go there, will they be able to see?
Yeah, so it's best to go through my links. So if you go to my link tree, when it's time for the course to start, it'll be on my link tree or on my website, which is drvestmedicalintuitive.com. You can get a link to whatever I'm teaching. So I tend to teach 2 courses a year. I just finished a course on medical intuition and ancestral wisdom. And I'm starting a new course, which is like advanced medical intuition and ancestral medicine, but it's bundled in with the intro class. So you get recordings of the first class I taught, and then you take the second class with me live. And that hasn't been, it's starting in May, and it'll be advertised in the next week or 2. It'll be on my website or in my link tree.
Okay, it sounds like I think I will look into that. Given the things that happened, we stopped in front of house with my cousins, house after house, and people told stories, and I learned things I did not know, and we met the people in the houses now, which was really interesting. I don't know what that means, but I don't know, letting them know. Yeah.
Yeah, this work is important too, because right now so many people are waking up to their gifts, that when you wake up to your gifts and you start really stepping fully into your psychic abilities, then you have to do a lot of emotional work. Because if you don't, it's going to interfere or filter the information you get. And so doing some ancestral healing is going to help you address some of those emotional issues that could be blocks for your development. People like to call them shadows these days. That's kind of a popular term. Mm-hmm. I'm not a fan of that word, but I guess because I associate shadows with something spiritual. But basically we all have, emotional wounds, emotional issues that we haven't processed, whether from our childhood, past lives, family dynamic. And if we don't deal with those, and then we try to step onto the path of being a healer or a psychic, it's going to distort our information. And so working on yourself and also working on your any family wounds is going to help you with that.
Is it your experience that healing can actually go into the past? Like if you fix something in yourself or you hit a point of neutralizing an issue, does it affect your relatives in spirit?
It does. Because, so some of the work that I do is, I'm a medium and I work with the Akashic records, and my expertise in mediumship is working with traumatic death And so I've spent a lot of time working with spirits on the other side who have died either through, suicide or murder or some tragic accident, something really shocking. And what I have found with people who've passed in that way is that they're trying to heal on the other side. And sometimes when we heal on this side, it assists them in their healing. So, for example, if somebody treated you badly, right? You had an ancestor who treated you badly, and you heal that wound here, it helps them to heal from what they did when they were here. If you have issues that you inherited from your family, unhealthy coping mechanisms or something like, or mantras. I call them mantras. Like we have family sayings that get passed down, and then we sometimes use them in harmful ways. Like, well, the other shoe is always going to drop, or, we're not a lucky family, right? There might be these negative mantras that are passed down that can then manifest in your life as lots of problems. And if you heal that, you're also healing that ancestor, because the ancestor, when people die, they go through their life review, and in their life review, they get to see and feel the way that they impacted everybody in their life, regardless of what their intention was. And all that spirits want when they're on the other side is they want to make up for what they did. They always were like, oh God, I wish I hadn't done that. And they like to keep, some of them are keeping track of us. They're looking at their descendants, and they're kind of cheering us on, and they're wanting us to succeed. They're wanting us to be happy. And when we do resolve some of those issues, it's like they get this sigh of relief, like, oh, okay, it stops with her, right? This family pattern that I passed on to her or him, they're going to stop it. And so, that then allows them to feel like, okay, my legacy is better now, right? And so, yes, we are healing them when we heal ourselves, and when we heal our families, we're healing that whole line of people.
That's very interesting. I have received apologies from some people in spirit, like the first words out from a medium, and it's fascinating to me. Like, well, how good of you to recognize that clearly I have things I still have to work on.
Yeah, saying you're sorry is very healing for the person who says it.
Well, we have a tiny bit of time left. What I guess might be useful to have some parting words of navigational tips for people right now, maybe?
Well, I just want to emphasize for people that it's really important to do whatever you can to maintain hope and to keep yourself out of despair, because the world is made of energy, and our thoughts and our feelings are all a part of that energy. And the way that we are going to bring about the future that we want to see with the leader that we want in the White House is by all of us collectively visualizing it, and by all of us collectively maintaining that energy of hope. Because, with manifestation, people talk a lot about manifestation. And unfortunately, because in the West, we're so focused on the mind, people think that manifestation is about thinking certain thoughts. But really, it's about embodying that dream. And so it's about having dreams or visions for what the future will be. And then not just thinking about it, but seeing it and feeling it. And so we want to do like visualizations on a regular basis. Just sit with yourself, sit in nature, and just imagine what it would look like if things were exactly the way you want them to be. What would our country look like? What would your life look like? And if we do that, each of us does that, on a regular basis, we're embodying that, we're feeling it, we're visualizing it, and we're thinking about it, that's how we shift our reality. That's how we move into that reality. And so that's why it's important to do whatever you can to raise your vibration, to stay in a positive and an uplifted mindset. And of course, that's difficult, right? Because we keep getting bad news. But we have to believe in the bigger picture. We have to believe that the bad news we're getting on a regular basis is not going to stand. And another thing that I think is helpful to understand, which helped me a lot, my guides told me that the person who's in the office now, the two people that are causing all this destruction, I call them the Astum, the head ass and the lieutenant ass. These two people, they are vehicles for change. Mm-hmm. They are profoundly negative vehicles for change. And so they play a role. They're playing a role. What they're doing is going to result in the destruction of a lot of our structures that we have. Government and societal structures are being destroyed, which is very hard to watch. But what my guides keep reminding me is that this is a means to an end, that what they are starting for very bad reasons, we will finish. And so we will rebuild what has been destroyed. And when we rebuild it, it's going to be so much better than it was. We're going to have a different type of government. We're going to have women in positions of leadership. We're going to have councils. We're going to have more egalitarianism. We're going to have more equality and less of this kind of 99 and 1% hierarchies.
More circular, like I don't remember how many, but I know that there was a group of tribes in northern New York that inspired but like 7 or anyway, there was a matriarchal group that inspired some of the Declaration of Independence and the women who were in Seneca Falls for the Women's Rights Convention of 1848.
Yeah, the Haudenosaunee is one name for them, or the Confederacy. There were Confederacy of the six nations. Later, there were 7, also called the Iroquois Confederacy.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, matriarchal. In fact, most of the tribes on the Eastern Seaboard were matriarchal. My tribe is matriarchal, the Seminole. And in matriarchal societies, there's a lot more equality. We don't have those same hierarchies that you find in patriarchal societies because leadership is thought about differently. And that's what I see for the future of our country. I see the rise of the divine feminine. I see the creation of councils for governing instead of just having one person running everything. And we can hold on to that vision and understand that we're all a part of bringing that into being, and that even these nefarious characters are a part of bringing that into being, even though they don't know they are, because they're just they're just tools for this great awakening, this great unfolding.
And we'll just leave it at tools. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I'm really thrilled because I've been watching you for months and going, I want this woman on my show. Would you please tell people where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on a number of social media platforms like TikTok, where I'm the Ethical Psychic. I'm on YouTube at my full name, Jennifer Lisa Vest. You can also find me on Instagram at Spirit Teacher, though I'm not there that much these days because, Meta. I have a website, which is drvestmedicalintuitive.com. It's drvestmedicalintuitive.com. I know it's a long name, but that's the name of my website. And so I have a lot of links on there. I teach courses on the Shift Network, so you can also find me there. Oh, I do have a podcast. You already mentioned it, Journal of a Medical Intuitive. I haven't really done an episode recently, but I have been guesting on other people's podcasts.
Well, I appreciate it greatly. And I thank you so much. And we've got insane chat going on with people very, very happy. So I look forward to hearing more of the installments of the story from you and buy her books. Yay. Uh, and my forecasts again are there we go, The Ethical Psychic, Beginner's Guide to Healing with Integrity. And then we also have the back of Sovereign Women, which is what we want. Sovereign women, all of us. There we go. Thank you very, very much again. And everyone, my forecasts are at omtimes.com, empowermentunlimited.net, and YouTube is Professional Aquarian. And at my Patreon, patreon.com/Kathy Beal, I have daily 45 to 60 second forecasts, which are weirdly popular. So if you want to just get a focus for your day with a lot of sass, that's there. So everyone be safe, keep dreaming, build your communities, do things that make you happy that you're alive, gravitate to those experiences. I've had some of the most magical times of my life, despite what's going on out in the world. And I challenge you to excel with that. So everyone be safe. And thank you again, Jennifer, Lisa, and bye, everybody.